My name is Elena Mara Caldwell. I am 30 years old, and the day my heart finally gave out, I was in the middle of fixing a problem that was never supposed to be mine. I had a feeling something was wrong for weeks, but I pushed through it the way I always did, with coffee, late nights, and the quiet hope that if I just held everything together for everyone else a little longer, it would somehow all be worth it in the end. Headaches, dizziness, that occasional tightness in my chest that made me pause for a second and press my hand against my ribs like I could hold my heart in place if I tried hard enough. They were all just alarms I learned to mute. I told myself I did not have time to be sick, not when I was helping cover my mom's car payment, not when my sister Melissa was texting me every 2 days asking for just a quick loan, not when my dad kept acting like his missed mortgage payment had my name printed on it in invisible ink. That is the part people do not see when they scroll past our pretty photos online. They see smiling faces and matching outfits and think, what a close family, what a blessing. They do not know what it feels like to grow up the only daughter in a house where you are always the background character in someone else's story. My sisters, Melissa and Paige, could crash a car and somehow end up getting praised for learning something valuable. I once won a statewide engineering award, and my mom's only response was, "Oh, nice. Did you remember to thank your professor?" After that, I stopped expecting applause. I stopped expecting much of anything. I did not even want recognition anymore. I just wanted something back, a sliver of gratitude, a moment where someone looked at me and saw more than a problem solver with a working credit score. I was at my desk, halfway through prepping a presentation for a major client that was supposed to be my big step forward at work. I remember standing up to grab a folder from the printer, feeling the room tilt just slightly, like a camera panning too fast, and then nothing. No dramatic fall, no cinematic slow motion, just a hard cut to black. When the world came back, it came back in pieces. Beeping. The harsh white of hospital lights, the weight of wires taped to my chest, a nurse leaning over me, adjusting a drip, her voice calm and practiced as she told me I was in the cardiac unit and I was safe. It felt unreal, like one of those scenes you watch in a movie and assume will never be yours. But it was not a panic attack or simple exhaustion. It was a cardiac event, full stop. The doctor told me if I had collapsed anywhere else, it might have ended differently. My coworkers were the reason I was still breathing. Someone called an ambulance immediately. They hovered over my bed later, apologizing for being the ones who had to tell the hospital that I did have family, that my parents existed, that I was not alone, at least not on paper. The hospital staff was incredible. They were kind, professional, efficient, and when they realized no one had come to sit at my bedside after hours had passed, they gently mentioned they had already contacted my emergency contacts, my parents. I nodded and told myself there had to be a reason. Maybe my mom had bad reception, maybe my dad was out of town, maybe Melissa and Paige were scrambling to figure out childcare or work schedules. I waited. I waited through that first evening, the slow drip of the IV and the ache in my chest, a reminder that my body had finally called my bluff. I waited through the night, through the next morning, through lunchtime, through the second night. 2 days. 2 days of hospital food and vital checks and nurses asking if anyone was coming and me saying yes. I am sure they are probably just busy. 2 days with no calls, no texts, no footsteps in the hallway that slowed outside my door. On the third day, I woke up from a nap and reached for my phone, convincing myself it had to be a signal issue or a wrong number, something that would explain the silence. There was only one new notification. An Instagram tag. It was from Melissa, a photo of her, Paige, and our parents at the lake. All of them gathered around a picnic table like an advertisement for togetherness. My mom had even made her signature deviled eggs, the ones she only pulled out for holidays and special occasions. The caption hit harder than the chest pain ever did. Family day without the drama. They tagged me like I was a punchline to an inside joke, like I was not half broken in a hospital bed while they were laughing over potato salad and plastic cups of lemonade. I stared at the screen until it dimmed, then tapped it awake and stared again, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something softer if I gave them enough time. They did not. Something inside me shifted, not in a loud or explosive way, but in a quiet, final way, like a door closing with no intention of ever opening again. I did not comment, I did not text, I did not call. I lay there listening to the machines breathe steadily beside me and felt an odd kind of stillness spread through my chest, a fragile, dangerous calm. The girl who would rush to explain, to excuse, to forgive, she faded a little that day. In her place, someone else started to take shape, someone who had finally seen enough. The doctors kept me for more tests. They monitored my heart, adjusted my medication, talked about stress and overwork and the way the body keeps score even when you pretend you are fine. I barely spoke unless I needed to. The nurses started bringing me extra blankets and asking if I wanted the blinds open or closed, little kindnesses that made the contrast with my family feel like a bruise I could not stop prodding. Still, my phone stayed silent where it mattered. No missed calls from home. No messages that said, "How are you? Are you scared? Do you need us?" 4 days later, I woke up to my phone buzzing frantically on the bedside table. For a second, hope flared, old and stubborn, the way it always did. Then I picked it up and saw the number. 74 missed calls, a single text from my father. "We need you. Answer immediately." Not a word about the hospital, not a question about whether I was still hooked to machines. No apology, no hesitation, just a command. "We need you." I stared at the message for so long the words started to blur. I did not feel panic. I did not feel guilt. I did not even feel the sharp, tearing anger I expected. There was just that same strange calm, like the room had gone soundless, and I was watching my life through glass. 4 days of silence, and the first time they reached out, it was because they needed something. Not me, just what I could do. My thumb hovered over the call button. For most of my life, this was the part where I would call back, apologize, even though I was the one bleeding, ask what was wrong and how I could fix it. Instead, another thought cut through, clean and clear. A different number, a different name. Someone who had always told me that one day they would push me too far. I scrolled past my parents, past my sisters, past my boyfriend's contact, and found the one name I had never been able to delete. Gramps. I tapped it. He picked up on the second ring, like he had been waiting. He did not waste time with small talk or pretend he did not know why I was calling. He just asked one question in that steady voice I remembered from childhood. "Which hospital?" And for the first time in a long time, I felt like someone was coming for me, not for what I could give. Gramps showed up 40 minutes later, walking into the room like the world could tilt and he would still be standing straight. Same old faded windbreaker, same scuffed shoes, same watch he had worn since I was little, and used to sit on his lap while he told me stories about people who survived hard things and came out different, not broken. His hair was thinner, his shoulders a little more hunched, but his eyes were exactly the same, sharp and steady and impossible to lie to. He glanced at the monitors, at the IV line, at the hospital wristband, then at me. "So," he said as he eased into the chair beside the bed, "they finally broke you too, huh?" I did not ask how he knew. I just let out a breath that sounded too much like a laugh and a sob mixed together and nodded. For a moment, neither of us said anything. It was strangely comfortable, the silence. He did not fill it with questions or lectures or empty reassurances. He just sat there, present. Like that alone was a kind of rescue. Eventually, he reached into his bag and pulled out a tablet and a battered notebook, dropping them on the tray like a mechanic setting out tools. "All right, kid," he said. "Show me where they've got you hooked." We started small. Email accounts, bank logins, online portals I barely remembered creating. My fingers shook as I typed, and he watched the screen like he was looking at an X-ray. One by one, we opened accounts and the picture came into focus, ugly and obvious. My name on 5 different loan agreements, 3 credit cards I was paying down that did not actually belong to me, 2 utilities, 1 car insurance policy for a vehicle I had never driven, my mom's car payment on autopay from my account, a monthly transfer to Melissa's checking that she always called a temporary bridge, Paige's security deposit floating out of my savings, as if it had always been meant to live there. It was all so woven into my routine that I had stopped seeing it. A quiet bleeding I had convinced myself was just the cost of being the responsible one. Every time they had a rough patch, I stepped in automatically, like a reflex. I thought that was what it meant to be family. You fix the holes, you patch the leaks, you sacrifice and stay humble and never ask for anything back. But sitting there in that bed, watching the totals add up on the screen, I realized something that felt like a punch to the chest. They had not just leaned on me, they had leaned through me. I was not a daughter to them. I was a pressure valve, a walking credit line, a human buffer between their choices and the consequences waiting on the other side. Gramps did not say I told you so, even though he could have. He had warned me more than once in that quiet way of his, asking why I was still signing for things that did not have my name on them. My boyfriend had asked the same question, his voice a little sharper, because he had watched me choose their emergencies over our plans more than once. Weekend trips we postponed. A savings goal we kept pushing back because somebody's rent was due just this one last time. I had defended them every time. They are trying. They just need a little help. It will be different once they get back on their feet. Now, staring at the proof on a screen, those excuses tasted like ash. Make a list, Gramps said, tapping the notebook toward me. Everything tied to you. Every place your name is holding up something that is not yours. So I did. Line after line filled the page. Auto payments, transfers, cosigns, card authorizations. By the time I was done, my hand ached and my chest felt oddly light and hollow at the same time. He looked it over, nodded once, and then we started closing doors. We canceled the transfer to Melissa's checking account. She was always calling herself barely surviving, posting about struggle and sacrifice. But she had flown to Miami 3 times this year and made sure the entire internet saw every cocktail and poolside selfie. She could survive one less silent bailout. We turned off the auto pay for my mom's car insurance. The provider could call her directly now. I removed my card information from her profile and changed the password. The loan I co-signed for Melissa, the one she had conveniently stopped mentioning, we flagged it and filed a fraud report. Not because I wanted to destroy her, but because I had never agreed to be her permanent safety net. Each click felt terrifying and strangely freeing, like cutting ropes I had not even realized were wrapped around my throat. Gramps watched me the whole time, his expression unreadable. Every now and then, he let out a low sound, not quite a sigh, not quite a laugh, something that said he was both disappointed and not surprised at all. Loyalty's not a bad thing, he said at one point quietly, but it is only as good as the people you're loyal to. By the time visiting hours were almost over, my phone had turned into a live grenade. Calls stacked up so fast the screen barely had time to go dark. Mom, Dad, unknown numbers, Melissa, Paige. Voicemails poured in, one after another, but I did not listen. I put the phone face down on the blanket and focused on breathing through the odd mix of nausea and relief. Gramps stood to leave, but paused at the door. You know, he said, eyes narrowing just a little. This isn't the first time they've done something like this. Your uncle tried to step away once. They almost did to him what they are going to try with you. He did not explain further. He just told me he would be back in the morning and that he was going to make a few calls. After he left, curiosity finally got the better of me. I picked up my phone and opened the messages. My mom had left 3 voicemails, all in the same tone she used when the washing machine broke or the internet went out. I do not know what you think you are doing, she said, but this is not the way to handle things. You are overreacting. You are scaring everyone. Not fear for my health, not concern for the fact that my heart had literally failed, just irritation that the machine they relied on was suddenly out of service. Melissa's text was simpler, a screenshot of her bank balance, a glaring $29. Underneath it, she had typed, "What the hell, Elena? Fix this now." Paige was the emotional one. Her message came with more words and softer edges. She said she did not know what drama was happening, that she loved all of us, that she just wanted peace. She ended with, "Please do not punish me for things I did not do," which would have been easier to swallow if I did not remember the last time we spoke, when I told her I could not co-sign another lease, and she rolled her eyes, called me difficult, and then ignored my calls for 3 months. I felt a flicker of anger, hot and sharp, then watched it burn out almost as fast as it had come. I was too tired, too empty. Then a new notification popped up. My dad. "This is serious. Call me now. Everything is falling apart." Still nothing about the hospital, about my heart, about the nights I had spent alone, wondering if I would wake up at all. Just panic. And beneath it, something even more familiar. Fear. Not fear of losing me, but of losing what I did for them. I did not call. Instead, I opened my social media and saw the next move before they could even explain it. Melissa had posted a video. No music, no narration, just a slow, shaky walkthrough of my parents' house. Empty rooms, bare walls, the front door hanging open, the living room stripped, dining table gone, even the curtains missing from the windows. The kind of emptiness that only happens when the bank stops knocking and starts taking. The caption read, "They took everything. And guess who let them?" I watched it twice. My heart beat loud in my ears for reasons that had nothing to do with arrhythmia. Then I opened the mortgage account I had stupidly let them tie to me years ago. It had defaulted again. They had taken out equity, drained it, and used it to pay off Melissa's credit card debt and fund one of Paige's online business ideas, a boutique or a candle brand. I could not even remember which one, just that it had vanished within months. None of that money had ever gone toward the house. I had warned them last year, once, quietly. If they did not start managing things better, I would step back. They did not believe me. They never believed I would actually stop. Gramps was there when I scrolled through the statements, when I turned the tablet so he could see the missed payments, the late fees, the notices that had never reached me because they had gone to my parents' address. He studied them for a long moment, his jaw tightening, then nodded like something he had suspected for a while had finally been confirmed. "All right," he said, "that's enough." He walked out into the hallway and made several calls, his voice low and precise, using names and terms I did not recognize. A lawyer, an old friend in estate planning, an accountant I had never heard of. When he came back, there was a different kind of resolve in his face. What he told me next made the whole twisted picture snap into place. My family had not only been leaning on me, they had been circling him too, for years, especially after he retired. Paige suddenly inviting him to brunch, Melissa appearing with expensive Christmas gifts out of nowhere, my mom dropping hints about what was fair and how he should think about the future of the family. He had seen it all coming and, quietly, without fanfare, moved every asset, every trust, every property out of their reach, not to punish them, but to protect what he had built from being swallowed whole by their entitlement. And now, after seeing what they had done to me, he had taken one more step. Most of it, he said calmly, had been placed under a new structure with one primary beneficiary. Me. Not as a reward, not as some grand gesture to fix everything they had broken, but because I was the only one who had never asked for it and the only one who had proven, painfully, that I could survive without it. I lay there listening, my mind spinning, my chest still tight from the earlier strain, and felt the ground shift again. The first domino had fallen, and my family thought it was the bank. They had no idea it was me. The fallout did not wait for me to get stronger. It started that night, creeping into my phone in waves. Calls, voicemails, notifications, stacking faster than I could swipe them away. I played one voicemail on speaker just to see if anything had changed after everything Gramps and I had uncovered. It was my mother, her tone clipped and annoyed, like she was calling customer service about a late delivery. "I don't know what you think you're trying to prove, Elena, but this isn't the way to do it. Not fear, not worry, not a single word acknowledging that I had been in the hospital for days. Just anger that the machine she depended on had stopped running." Melissa's next barrage came in the form of texts. No greeting, no question, no human softness. First, a screenshot of her checking account, $29. Then, 3 words, "What is this?" And then another, "Fix it." She did not ask if I was okay. She did not ask why the transfers had stopped. She did not ask why her older sister, who had never once told her no, had suddenly hit a wall. It was as if she believed my only role in the world was to absorb consequences she created. Paige tried a different angle, as she always did. Her messages were longer, full of dramatic flourishes. She said she didn't know why there was tension, that she loved me, that she just wanted everyone to get along. Then the kicker, "Please don't punish me for things I didn't do." This from the same sister who vanished the moment I told her I couldn't co-sign one more lease. 3 months of silence. 3 months of her ignoring every call and text like I had become invisible. But none of that compared to what happened the next morning. At first, I thought the knock on my hospital room door was a nurse coming to check my vitals. Instead, a staff member stepped inside, holding a clipboard with an expression I couldn't read. "There's a woman downstairs," she said carefully. "She's claiming to be your medical proxy. She says she's your sister and needs to speak with your doctor immediately." My stomach dropped. I hadn't listed any of them as emergency contacts, not since the last time my father told me I was overreacting to something he caused. Only Gramps was allowed to make decisions if something went wrong. Which sister? I asked. The staff member checked her notes. Paige. I almost laughed. Paige, who hadn't visited. Paige, who hadn't texted. Paige, whose concern had been limited to long, performative messages crafted for sympathy rather than support. Now she wanted access to my medical records. She wanted to speak on my behalf. I told the staff she wasn't authorized, and they nodded with immediate understanding. Security escorted her out before she made it anywhere near my room. I thought it was over. I thought it was just another one of her dramatic impulses, something she'd post about later with a sad filter and a quote about how family is complicated. I was wrong. 3 hours later, the door opened again. This time, it was Gramps. He wasn't carrying flowers or food or a change of clothes, just a manila envelope thick enough to make my pulse spike. Found something, he said, dropping it onto the blanket. You need to see this. Inside were printed emails, screenshots, and legal drafts from a small law office I had never heard of. My parents' names were all over them. Melissa's, too. Paige's. They had been in contact with an attorney. Not about the house, not about debt consolidation, not about the mess they'd created. About me. Specifically, about exploring emergency guardianship. I read the documents 3 times, my eyes burning each time I reached the part where they alleged that I was mentally unstable, suffering from emotional distress, incapable of managing my finances after a breakdown. They described my recent financial decisions, meaning the act of cutting them off, as evidence of erratic behavior. They were trying to take legal control over my life, my accounts, my decisions, my autonomy. They weren't calling because they cared. They were calling because they were cornered. A slow heat rose in my chest, not anger exactly, something calmer, sharper, colder. A shift, a final brutal clarity. I had spent my whole life hoping they would wake up one day and realize how much I gave, that they would say thank you, or sorry, or even just notice. But this was different. This was war disguised as concern. Gramps sat down beside me. His voice was steady, almost too steady. They tried this years ago with your uncle when he tried to walk away. Didn't get far. But now, with money involved? He shook his head. They'll keep pushing if you don't put a wall up. And so I did. That afternoon, Gramps' lawyer arrived at the hospital with a briefcase and a calm expression that felt like armor. I signed documents that placed fraud alerts on every financial institution where my name appeared, next to any of theirs. We filed cease and desist letters to my parents and sisters, prohibiting them from contacting my doctors or attempting to impersonate medical decision-makers. A legal freeze was placed on every shared asset. They couldn't so much as breathe near my accounts without triggering a notification. I sat in that hospital bed, my chest still aching from a heart that had finally reached its limit, and felt something inside me strengthen. Not in a triumphant way, not in an angry way, in a necessary way. For the first time in my life, I was protecting myself. And that was when the next blow landed. Paige posted a video. This one wasn't rushed or raw. It was orchestrated. Lighting, music, a carefully chosen sweater that looked appropriately soft and vulnerable. Her voice quivered as she talked about mental illness, about invisible wounds, about how some people lash out when they're hurting. She never said my name, not directly. She didn't have to. I just want my brother back, she sniffled, deliberately using a pronoun that made the story harder for strangers to trace. We're trying to help him, but he's pushing us away. Her followers flooded the comments with sympathy. You're such a good sister. Stay strong. Family always heals. Then one comment changed everything. A stranger posted a screenshot of Melissa's old Instagram caption, Family Day without the drama. A picture taken while I was in the ICU. And the internet turned. The shift online was instant and brutal. Under Paige's emotional video, the comments flipped from sympathy to suspicion as people began scrolling back through her feed. Someone reposted a photo of her laughing at brunch 2 days after the hospital contacted my parents. Another dug up Melissa's past tweets about moochers who fake trauma. Someone else found a selfie my mom posted at a birthday dinner the night I had been rushed into the cardiac unit. The pieces assembled themselves publicly, without my involvement. Threads multiplied. People asked the questions my family never thought anyone would ask. If your sibling was in the hospital, why were you at the lake? Why did you tag her in that post? Why didn't any of you show up? Why are you making vague statements instead of helping her? Their carefully constructed narrative shattered under the weight of receipts they'd forgotten existed. Within 48 hours, the consequences rolled in like a storm. Influencers who had once collaborated with Paige quietly unfollowed her. The boutique she ran was flooded with refund requests and negative reviews. Melissa lost 2 sponsorships in a single afternoon after someone sent the brand her Family Day screenshot. Even my father's workplace wasn't spared. A client mentioned the viral threads during a meeting, and HR opened an investigation. By the end of the week, he had been placed on leave. Then he was let go entirely. My phone buzzed constantly, not with family messages. I had silenced them, but with notes from old acquaintances. A former coworker emailed me, gently asking if I was doing better now. A woman I'd gone to high school with messaged to say she was sorry to hear about my breakdown. That word made my jaw tighten. I hadn't broken down. I had broken free. Then Jen called. She was an old friend, someone who had seen the cracks in my family when we were teenagers. She worked in media now, sharp-eyed and sharper-tongued, the kind of person who could smell a lie even through a screen. "Elena," she said, not bothering with small talk, "you need to see what's happening. But listen, none of this is your fault. People are calling them out because the story doesn't add up." Part of me felt vindicated, but a larger part just felt tired. I didn't want my life dissected online. I didn't want to be a symbol, a headline, a thread full of strangers arguing about whether my family was manipulative or misunderstood. I just wanted quiet. I wanted my heart to stop pounding every time a notification appeared. So I posted a photo. Not a monologue, not a rant, not a defense. Just a picture of me sitting up in my hospital bed with Gramps by my side. No makeup, no dramatic lighting, no strategically messy hair, just the truth. And a short caption underneath. Sometimes silence isn't weakness, it's restraint. No hashtags, no tags, nothing that invited conversation. But it was enough. Enough for people to understand that the narrative my family was spinning didn't match the reality printed on my medical wristband. 2 hours after I posted it, my phone lit up with calls. Melissa tried first, then Paige, then my mother, then all of them again. I let each call ring until it stopped. I wasn't ready to hear their voices twist themselves into new shapes. Finally, a text from my father popped up. "We didn't want it to come to this. You're forcing us to do things we never wanted to do." Something deep inside me clicked at those words, a quiet, steel-edged understanding. They still thought they were in control. They still believed they could corner me with guilt and obligation, push me back into place like nothing had changed. They still didn't understand that the girl who used to bend had been replaced by a woman who finally broke the pattern. 2 days later, a letter arrived at the hospital, hand-delivered in a crisp white envelope. I opened it slowly, half expecting another guilt trip or maybe an apology written with shaking hands. Instead, it was legal, cold, precise. A notice of intent to pursue emergency conservatorship over me. Their final move, their last attempt to reclaim control. They claimed I was mentally unfit to manage my finances, that my erratic behavior, meaning the act of protecting myself, was proof I was spiraling, that my hospitalization signaled emotional instability. They were attempting to take everything officially, to lock me into a legal cage where they could dictate my decisions again. I felt my pulse spike, but it wasn't panic. It was resolve. I called my lawyer. He didn't sound surprised. "Families like this," he said gently, "don't surrender control willingly. They escalate." But what my parents didn't know was that Gramps and his legal team had already moved faster. We had filed a preemptive response days earlier, notarized statements from my doctors confirming I was mentally stable and fully capable of making decisions. Proof of income, logs showing my attempts to separate finances, a letter from my employer confirming I was still employed and on voluntary medical leave. The hearing was dismissed before it even reached the judge. Their lawyer quietly withdrew, likely realizing he had been fed a dramatized family tragedy designed to mask financial desperation. My family's power over me cracked that day, but the smear campaign didn't stop. They pivoted. People from my past began sending strange messages again, concerned notes, subtle probes. Someone wanted to know whether I was feeling like myself. Another said she heard I was having a hard time. And still, I stayed silent. Then Paige posted another video, this one polished to perfection. Dim lighting, piano music, the whole performance calibrated to trigger sympathy. She talked about invisible wounds again, about losing a sibling to darkness, about how much she loved me even when I was hurting people. She never said my name, but everyone knew. The comment section flooded with sympathy. You're so brave. Mental illness is so hard. Family always forgives. And then someone posted a side-by-side, her crying video next to Melissa's laughing lake photo captioned, Family Day without the drama. The internet did what it always does when lies crack. It dug deeper. Within hours, Paige's boutique was review bombed. Melissa's dance sponsor dropped her publicly. My father's local reputation collapsed. Everything they had built on entitlement and performance began sliding out from under them. That was when my mom finally texted, Please, can we talk? 5 small words. Too small. Too late. They didn't bring comfort. They brought distance. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my notes app and started listing the remaining strings I still needed to cut. I thought that after the legal failure, after the online backlash, after losing jobs and sponsorships and the last fragile pieces of their public image, my family would finally stop. People like them usually burn hot, then burn out. But I should have known better. Selfish people don't surrender. They adapt, and they adapt fast when their favorite source of stability, me, was gone. I had just been discharged from the hospital. Still weak, still moving slowly, but able to walk without the machines humming beside me. Gramps picked me up at the entrance with the same steady hands that had guided me through everything these past days. He handed me a bottled drink, told me we'd be staying at his place for a few days while I regained strength. I didn't argue. I didn't want to step foot in my apartment yet. Too many memories of nights I stayed up transferring money I didn't have. Too many phone calls where the word emergency had been used like a hook around my neck. We were halfway to his house when my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You should come by the house. We need to talk. It's urgent. Paige. I deleted it instantly. The urgent ones were always the ones where I was supposed to fix something, take responsibility for something, sacrifice something. I wasn't doing that anymore. Not now. Not ever. 2 hours later, Jen called me again. Her voice wasn't steady this time. It was sharp, clipped. Elena, she said, you need to check Facebook right now. My stomach tightened. I opened the app. There it was, a post from Melissa, a photo of all of them, my parents, my 2 sisters, standing in front of the old house. Behind them, a U-Haul truck, my dad holding a box, Paige wiping what looked like tears, Melissa in the center like she was leading a press conference. Their clothes looked rumpled just enough to seem sincere. The caption, losing everything hurts, especially when it's because your own blood turned on you. But we forgive her. She's still our sister. We just want her to come home before it's too late. The comments were a battlefield. Half the people wrote support. The other half called them out, accused them of manipulation, of lying, of trying to emotionally blackmail me. Then I swiped to the next image in the carousel. It was a framed childhood photo of me, held in Paige's hands. Underneath it, the caption, We're keeping her room ready. Family is forever. A cold chill moved through me. Not fear, not sadness, something darker and more unsettling, because it felt like an emotional ransom note, a threat wrapped in sentiment, a final desperate tactic. But the next day, they escalated again. I received a formal letter from the county clerk's office. I almost didn't open it. I thought it might be related to the conservatorship attempt that had already failed. But the sender name made my breath catch. It was from my father, a new handwritten will, drafted the week after the conservatorship stunt collapsed. It listed his assets, very few now, considering the financial disaster they'd created. And then, in a shaky script, in the event of my passing, all remaining assets will go to the family members who maintain unity. Elena is disinherited until she returns to this family and reconciles. I stared at the paper for a long time, first in shock, then in disbelief, and then, strangely, in quiet amusement. I started laughing, soft at first, then stronger, not because I wanted anything from him, I never did, but because even now, with everything falling apart, their final move was exactly what it had always been, a trap disguised as love, a cage made of guilt, a demand for loyalty dressed up as legacy. They thought they could scare me back. They thought the threat of being erased would pull me home. They didn't understand something simple. I wanted to be erased from their story. So I did the only thing that made sense. I had my lawyer draft a response. It included a legal waiver relinquishing any claim to their estate, a permanent no-contact order, a signed removal of every family member from all medical and legal emergency records. Simple, direct, final. The kind of closure that didn't need an apology to be complete. Gramps and I moved out of state 2 weeks later. He said he wanted to see the mountains again. I believed him, but I also knew this was his way of starting over with me, away from the noise and the claws of my past. We bought a small cabin just outside a quiet town, the kind where the air feels different, where morning light spills through the trees like something healing. I took a remote job, lighter hours, gentler expectations. My heart slowly steadied, my sleep returned. I started cooking again, reading again, breathing again. My boyfriend visited the first weekend after the move. He held me for a long time, the kind of embrace that made me realize how much tension I had been carrying in my shoulders for years. He didn't ask the questions everyone else did. He didn't ask why I hadn't walked away sooner, or why I kept giving until I collapsed. He just said, "You're here now, that's what matters." Later, he told me his ex-girlfriend had reached out to ask if I was okay, someone who barely knew me, but had seen enough of the online storm to recognize the lies. Somehow that small detail made my chest ache in a different way. Even strangers were kinder than my own family had been. Every so often, someone from the old life tries to reach out. A cousin, a neighbor, a coworker from years ago. They want the story. They want the version that makes sense to them. But I never explain. Because people like Melissa and Paige and my parents are good at telling stories. Stories where they're always the ones hurt, always the ones betrayed, always the ones abandoned by someone unstable. Let them have their story. I have something better. I have the truth. I have peace. And peace is worth more than the love of people who only loved me when I was useful.